Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to more Sonic Amateur Games Expo 2016 coverage with me, Sonic Yoda from SEGADriven. In this episode we're looking at classic Sonic 3D Adventure by Chishado Games, and this is quite an interesting concept actually, and something I can get fully behind. So the idea here is that they've transported classic Sonic into the sort of gameplay world of Super Mario 3D World on Wii U, which means that this is a slower paced, more methodical platform-based platform game, as you'd expect, in the sort of Super Mario mold. So it kind of feels like an isometric Sonic game. Yeah, like I say, it's a little bit more methodical, slower paced, a lot more focus on actual just platforming and jumping on enemies and so forth. So yeah, it's a really nice idea actually, and it kind of almost works. The execution is a little bit off, unfortunately. Visually, let's start there, because it looks great. Really great looking game. There's this lovely sort of depth of field effect which gives it a nice little haziness in the background and stuff to make things just look a little bit nicer. Your focus is always on the character in the centre of the screen. Art-wise, very pretty. It looks like a nice sort of melding of Mario and Sonic. Very sort of Sonic Lost World in its visuals, which I'm really into because that's a very sort of bold and vibrant game like this. So yeah, it's a really nice looking thing, and I've got to well done for like accomplishing such a nice looking thing. So controls wise, I think this would control a lot better if I could use a controller. Sadly, I can't. I think you have to sort of map your own controller using Joy-to-Key and stuff, which is just I can't be bothered. So yeah, that was a little bit annoying. So I've been using the keys for this, and using keys for a 3D game, not particularly the nicest in the world. I've often found that I was over jumping myself and falling off platforms and things unnecessarily. It was difficult to sort of maneuver around with the keys set up. So that's a little bit disappointing. The big problem with this is collision detection. So as long as you're hitting enemies on the top, so jumping directly on top of their heads, you're fine. Anything else though, so if you're hitting them from underneath, or there are specific enemies that you just cannot attack, so things like coconuts in the trees and the chompers underwater, just can't seem to damage them at all, which is a bit strange. You would have thought like if Sonic is curled up, he should be able to attack enemies, but unfortunately that is not the case in this one. You really need to be hitting things from the top, which is a little bit annoying. And like I say, the collision detection doesn't feel quite right. I often found myself sort of clipping on edges, and the springs don't seem to trigger a lot of the time. So yeah, there's some things that need to be tightened up to make this a really sort of nice and playable experience, because at the moment it's a little bit glitchy, which is a shame because visually it looks really polished and almost like a professional production. It just needs that little bit of tweaking in the control department to make it work a little bit nicer. I'm trying to think of some other things that I noticed. The death animation often bugs out, and it's not very clear that you've died. So the death animation in this at the moment seems to just be Sonic curled up, like spinning, and that's not a very clear indication that I've just died. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. The HUD often disappears because it's white on white. The background is quite heavily bright and difficult to sort of make out the font on, so that could have been changed. Maybe have a little background square with a colour on it, something that just makes the contrast against the font look a little nicer. Yeah, it's... And the other thing as well is the transitions are a bit jerky. There's a sequence after the first stage where it cuts to a little cutscene where Robotnik's looking at sort of like the production line of his Badniks, and the transition to that was really off. Like I thought the game was going to crash. Just some, it's an aesthetic thing, something that could be tidied up at some point, and it would look a little bit nicer. But at the moment, like I say, this is a very good attempt at trying to make a more slower-paced, methodical, platform-based Sonic game in the Mario or Sonic Lost World mold, and I really appreciate that as an idea, because it looks great. It's almost there, but just the execution is a little bit off. unfortunately. Controls are not great with the keys. I'd like to be able to use a controller just as standard, like native setup. Yeah, the transitions are off. Some of the collision detection isn't great, so if you can look over that sort of thing, you can still play this to a certain degree, and it's still a good time. It's got to be said. You do have to kind of make excuses for it a little bit, which is a shame, because this is definitely the start of something that could be a fantastic 3D Sonic game.